Hey, time for another edition of Spitting Loogs with ESPN's Tom Luginbill. I'm Lance Taylor from The Next Round. It is on Disrupt the Media. Make sure you like and subscribe. It is always brought to you by mybookie.ag. Football season is here. Winning season is as well. Make sure you put in that promo code Next Round. They're going to hook you up at checkout at mybookie.ag. So you were in Tuscaloosa last week. You saw Alabama. I thought 21-6 halftime. That game was over. And then the Jalen Key penalty kind of gave a little momentum. Yeah. They go down. They made it interesting. And I've got a point here, and I want to come back to Alabama. But you and I both agreed. We saw you for a little bit on Thursday. You dropped by the Disrupt Studios. We had a conversation. We were in agreement. A&M's probably better than most people think. They go up to Neyland. Short punt return. Max Johnson looked really uncomfortable. The offensive line doesn't look good. They lose that game. Now Jimbo's in serious trouble. But on the other side, I thought Tennessee was super physical. If Tennessee goes in to Bryant-Denny and beats Alabama, could you say possibly Tennessee second best team in the SEC? I know that sounds crazy and a lot of things to do there. And I thought Tennessee, watching them last year, maybe it's just an offensive thing, looked better. But this defense and their ability to run the football, they got some athletes.
Well, first and foremost, nobody's run the football on A&M. Nobody. Not Alabama, not anybody. And so credit Tennessee right then and there, because that's part of the physicality you're referencing. Now, thank goodness they could run the ball because they couldn't throw it a lick. I think that's if anybody's expecting a rematch or a redo of what we saw last year, I think we're going to see anything but that. I think it's going to be tough sledding potentially for both teams. Tennessee's really good in the offensive line. They don't have the ability to create the consistent explosive plays that they had a year ago through the air. I mean, a year ago, that Tennessee offense looked like Washington looks like now. All right, they're a far cry from that. But I do think that they have confidence that they can run the football. And you're going to sit there and say, well, man, how'd they run the ball in A&M? Then you're going to say, well, how are they going to run the ball in Alabama? Well, they just ran the ball in A&M, so maybe they can. But I do think when you go on the road, Tennessee, obviously the last time they went on the road to Florida, it was not a good outcome. But you're going to have to do a little bit of what they did at home last week. Like, you need a kicking game play to result in points. You need a mistake to be made by Alabama at home and then take advantage of that mistake and turn it into points of your own. To be honest with you, this matchup's interesting to me because I think both the quarterbacks have a lot of the same deficiencies. Very impressive physical skill set, very streaky, inaccurate. Kind of what you see is what you get. If Tennessee were to win this game, are they the second best team? I don't think they're the second best roster, but you could make an argument that, beating A&M, beating Alabama on the road, the Florida loss isn't looking so bad now. Florida's 5-2. It's like, how did Florida get to 5-2? You sit there, wake up one day, and you're like, what? And Graham Mertz, of all people, is playing out of his mind right now. So good for Billy Napier. But I don't think Tennessee has Georgia's roster. I don't think Tennessee has Alabama's roster. Doesn't mean they can't win the game. I think Texas A&M has a better roster than Tennessee, but Tennessee played better. The best roster doesn't always win the game.
We've already seen Texas roll into Bryant-Denny and beat Alabama. We've seen Oklahoma beat Texas. Both of those teams will obviously be in the league next year. Moving forward, when you look at what Josh Heupel's got, and you talked about his offense last year was very Washington-like with what Kalen DeBoer and Michael Penix are doing right now. You mentioned Billy Napier. Florida's always been kind of that sleeping giant. We obviously know what Georgia is. We know what Alabama is. I mean, moving forward, is the SEC in the next 4 or 5 years, if you had to pull out a crystal ball, is it going to be like the NFL with transfer portal and NIL? And it's just like, 8 to 10 teams could win this league on any given year, and it's just going to be super unpredictable.
It's a really good question because I think if you look at like the Alabamas and the Georgias, like at their height, at their best, and maybe a Clemson at their best or an Ohio State at their best, what's not changing because of the portal and NIL is the top 22, okay, if you will, on both sides of the ball. They're not getting impacted. Like Georgia's top 22, Alabama's top 22, they're not getting impacted. What's getting impacted, what's thinning the herd is the threes, right? The next guy, not the 2 deep, the 3 deep guy. The guy that is good enough he's on Alabama's roster, he's on Georgia's roster. He's not playing yet, but he's good enough to. That's the guy that's going somewhere else. And so that's how the talent gets dispersed. And now Do they go somewhere else and stay in conference, or do they go out of conference into a scenario like Jordan Birch at South Carolina and he goes to Oregon? So, but if they stayed in conference, yeah, you would see much more competitive balance top to bottom, because all the rosters would be infused with talent, and likely talent that whatever team that player ended up at probably didn't have a shot at that player coming out of high school, right? And that's the caliber of player that they're all looking to get. So I think it's a great question. There's so much we don't know yet about NIL, the transfer portal, and what's going to happen 2 to 3 years down the road. But the one thing I do know, the teams with the most resources, the teams with the greatest collective, the teams that are winning on the field will be the least impacted by the transfer portal.
Look, Alabama's obviously been dominant for the last 15 years under Nick Saban. You saw them up close and personal. They've only got one loss, the Texas loss that I referenced. They've got everything in front of them. They went out there in the college football playoff. They can win another national championship. But the Alabama team that you've seen now up until this point, do they have enough talent? I know they do on the defensive side of the ball. Can this offense get it together and go on a run when you've still got to play Tennessee and you've got to play LSU and you've obviously got to play Auburn on the road, which is always difficult, SEC championship, a lot of big games still left in front of them?
We were having this conversation in a break during the game, near the end of the game, and the way the game played out, it was so funny because the whole time the game's being played, it felt like it was 45-7 Alabama. And then you look up at the score and it's like, wait a minute, it's only 21-6. It had a weird vibe to it. So we were talking in break and we're like, you know what? I could easily see this team like mess around, screw around, and fall into the college football playoff. I could totally see it happening. But I could also see it the exact opposite. If LSU somehow got them in a track meet, Alabama's not built to be in a track meet right now. Obviously they were able to handle and get Ole Miss off schedule because that team can get you in a track meet too. That's what Alabama would have to do, I think, against LSU, and they're capable of doing it because defensively they just suffocate you. But yeah, they're good enough. They're not playing with a first rounder at quarterback right now. I mean, that's the bottom line. Their left side of their offensive line is really problematic, but it's mostly problematic because it's young, not because it's not talented. But you have a true freshman at left tackle, you have a true sophomore at left guard, and then the reserves are a redshirt sophomore and a redshirt freshman. Well, the right side's a lot stronger and a lot older, and it's been less problematic. I think the running back room is really good. Like Lance, like when we were talking to Coach Saban, like even he doesn't gush much, but he was like, that as a group is a really, really consistently productive group. And I think they are too. And they started to show it in the third quarter and then just up and decided not to
made no sense
anymore. It was so odd. And so, but yeah, they could. I still think they're going to have to clean up a lot of things, but they kind of are what they are right now on offense. I mean, it may get better. It may smooth itself out a little, but they're going to continue to have to work around some things.
Hey, does your wife know you're a promo code?
So I shared this with her, and upon various other opportunities to remind her how fortunate she is.
Yeah.
Right. This just was like icing on the cake. I was like, you're now married to a promo code. Okay. And so just when you think about, giving me any lip, let's remember promo code.
Manscaped.com, incredible products. Put in that promo code Loogs. They're going to hook you up at checkout. That is manscaped.com for all of their great products. Always bringing you Spittin' Loogs here on Disrupt the Media, ESPN's Tom Luginbill. Before we get to this weekend, more importantly in Tuscaloosa, where'd you guys eat on Thursday and Friday?
We ate at Chuck's on Friday. And we all had different responsibilities media-wise while we were there. And we ended up ordering in, what did we order in? I think it was sushi on Thursday night.
Well, Chuck's has got really good sushi. Are you a sushi guy?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I am. I love sushi. Yeah. Chuck's has great sushi. And the weather was so nice. We actually sat outside, and it was gorgeous. It was, like, super nice. But it's amazing the wait to get into that place. Holy smokes.
Well, Tuscaloosa has changed so much since I was an undergrad down there. But one thing is the restaurants still are super crowded. I don't want to say a handful, but I mean, they've got, 8 to 10 really good restaurants, but all of them are always packed, especially game day weekends. Okay, so you're heading to Norman, Oklahoma. I've only been to one game there back in the day. UCF's coming in. John Rice Plumlee, I think, is going to play this week. At least that's what
I
I'm
think
hearing.
he's good to go. Yep.
It's amazing the season they've had. I mean, they've got a lot of talent, and Gus is an active guy in the portal. You've got an experienced quarterback that's super athletic. That team should be better than they are, right?
They should be better than they are, but here's what's happening. It's growing pains that affects your depth when you move up from the group of 5 to the Power 5 and you're playing Power 5 every single week. I always go back to this because I have people always say, well, because I've never been a huge proponent that we should be having a group of 5 undefeated team be part of the 14 playoff or whatever. And here's why: is if those teams were playing a Power 5 schedule with the team they currently have, week in and week out, they wouldn't be undefeated. And everybody says, well, how do you don't know that? They could go undefeated. And I was like, no, I actually kind of do know it, because if you go back and you look at TCU and Utah, and you go back and you look at the last 3 years of each of those two teams at the group of 5 level, one was 36-3 and one was 33-6. Their first 2 years at the Power 5 level, below 500. It's a different level, and it's not necessarily a talent piece here or a talent piece there or the frontline starters. It's everything below that and what it takes to get through the gauntlet. So, seeing, and then when you're having to play with a backup quarterback, all right, the way, oh, there we go, playing with a UCF quarterback as a backup, and then you blow the game against Baylor at home where you got them 35-7. It was just, that was a crusher. But again, didn't have their starting quarterback, but they played well enough to win the game. But it starts to mount, right? It starts to add up, and you're just looking around trying to survive. I think when we start to see a Cincy or UCF, BYU's actually done pretty decent for themselves, but they're an older football team. When you start to see those get some Power 5 level recruiting classes, you'll start to see them be more competitive week in and week out.
Yeah, look, I don't know if it's going to be this weekend, but I think we're going to see down the stretch a couple of 3-touchdown dogs win games outright. And UCF rolling into Norman, sleepy 11 o'clock game. You get your starting quarterback back. I think Oklahoma's good. I love Dylan Gabriel. I give Brent Venables a ton of credit being able to go from 6-7 to where he's got that team right now under the amount of pressure he had coming into this season. How good do you think Oklahoma is? Do they have staying power, or is this a game they could possibly lose?
I think they're the most improved team in college football from 2022 to 2023. I mean, Lance, do you remember what everybody was saying about this program 1 year ago this week?
Oh, I remember
49-0. Remember that?
People were saying that Brent Venables is over his head, that they don't have talent at Oklahoma. They're going to get completely destroyed when they roll into the SEC, that they are so far behind what Texas has got right now. And to go from 49-0 to beating that team outright to controlling everything in front of them, I mean, it's been an amazing turnaround.
It's been an amazing turnaround, and he should be credited. And you were right in your commentary there about one thing. They didn't have any players, particularly on defense. They had a couple, but that was a bare cupboard. What do they do? They go out and they get 3 to 4 guys, impact guys through the transfer portal. They've got 2 to 3 true freshmen that are already playing for them, making an impact. And the guys that they could count on are all back and playing well. Danny Stutzman, Jaron Kanik, all of those guys. So the defense is fixed. The offense just now has more weapons than they had a year ago. A year ago, you're trying to get Jalil Farouk to transition from running back to wide receiver. He's got really inconsistent hands, so it was tough to rely on him. They got Jaquez Petaway, Jaden Gibson, Nick Anderson now. Those guys really weren't a part of anything a year ago. It's a different roster. It's a different football team. The question that I have, and I think it's a fair question because it happens to a lot of people, is you have that emotional win versus Texas. And in a way, you kind of feel like, boy, it would be really good for us to play a game right away. Because instead of doing that, and I know everybody loves to have their bye in the middle of the season, so that's probably beneficial for Oklahoma. But now you've got 2 weeks of your entire roster basking in the glow, right?
Yep.
Everywhere they go, patting them on the shoulder, telling them how good they are. I think that's the biggest thing that Brent Venables and the staff has to guard against, is you referenced the 11 a.m. kick. UCF's trying to find themselves, but they get their quarterback back. They've got a ton of offensive skill. They can score. It's not – they're a pretty good football team. And will Oklahoma have the maturity to line up and come out and play like they're capable of playing. Because right now, unless Kansas gets Jalen Daniels back, both Texas and Oklahoma are going to be favored in every game they play the rest of the way that leads into the Big 12 championship and a rematch. So you can't slip up here if you're Oklahoma. Yeah, you beat Texas, but your margin for error is kind of the same as Texas.
It's Spittin' Loogs with ESPN's Tom Luginbill. I'm Lance Taylor for the next round. We do this on Disrupt the Media. Like and subscribe. It is brought to you by Lance'sLock.com, where you get winners every single day. Get that free winner. Go to Lance'sLock.com. Subscribe. We've got daily packages, weekly, monthly, annual packages at Lance'sLock.com. Not only college football, the NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA starts next week. Jump on board at Lance'sLock.com. So, after they survived Appalachian State, I've been waiting for North Carolina to lose a game. I know Drake May is a great quarterback. People said, hey, this defense in year 2 under Gene Chizik has really improved. Mm-hmm. I was just waiting and waiting. I thought last week would be a perfect setup with Miami blowing the game against Georgia Tech. Ron, if I asked you right now, more legit North Carolina or Oklahoma?
Wow. I would probably say Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's slightly better in the offensive line, and I believe Oklahoma is a better football team on defense. Now, North Carolina's improved, but understand that's relative to what we were comparing them against a year ago when they were they were in the USC-Colorado conversation on defense a year ago. So, but I think Oklahoma's actually really good on defense. But North Carolina is absolutely in the conversation and it deserves to be so. And I think for a couple of reasons. Number one, when they hired Chip Lindsey as the offensive coordinator, he delivered what Mac Brown wanted, and that was a power run game to take the pressure off of Drake May. Then you finally get Tez Walker back. So now this is a completely different offense than it was even just 2 weeks ago. They can run it. They can run it down your throat. Drake May can throw it all over the lot, and then I get this wide out that can just run right past you down the field. He's up there. He's in the conversation. Like, he's a Keon Coleman type guy. Like, he's going to be really, really good. And then defensively, they went out in the transfer portal and they made all the right moves. If you're going to nitpick North Carolina, you'd say that they might be vulnerable on the edge, on the perimeter at corner on defense, because that's their youngest position. But their 2 transfer portal guys at safety have made a huge difference. You know, they've got 2. And here's the thing about North Carolina and just how much they needed to prove on defense. There are 2 transfer portal guys in the secondary. One's from East Tennessee State, and the other was from Georgia State. So they have improvements from lower-level football. That's how bad they were playing, on that side of the ball. Both of those players brought a combined 23 interceptions to North Carolina's defense. So they've been vastly improved. And then they got a couple of guys here and there in their defensive front that just added depth. But the 3 linebackers are what define North Carolina. Power Eccles, Cedric Gray, and Kamen Rucker, they're difference makers. So it's interesting because Mac Brown talked about this when we had them 2 weeks ago. He said, what we have to avoid is getting comfortable. We got comfortable last year, and it all ended up just blowing up in our face. If we're mature enough to handle each and every week, and I think they showed that against Miami, because I agree with you. That was, everybody talks about a trap game. If there was ever a trap game, that was it. And they showed up, and they played well, and they ran away with the thing in the second half. So I think they're really good. And the quarterback he's in a different stratosphere.
So Georgia has not lost a game since we were in the COVID season of 2020.
I know.
It's crazy to wrap your hand around that, especially when we talk about the parity in college football. But now it seems to be a different Georgia team. They look like the Georgia team a couple of weeks ago against Kentucky, but 3 of their 4 last games in the SEC, South Carolina, Auburn, and this past week to Vanderbilt, they've trailed in these games. And now Brock Bowers, a guy that really bailed them out in that second half on the road against Auburn, he's out. Everybody talks about the tightrope procedure that he got this week. People are saying 4 to 6 weeks. There's speculation it could be a little more severe. If Brock Bowers, first of all, do you expect him to be back? And number 2, if he doesn't come back, who's your favorite to win the college football playoff?
So I would expect him to be back. Now, is that going to be in time for the game against Georgia Tech or an SEC championship game? Or would that be bowl season? And now we start to have the discussion about, skipping bowls and not participating and all of that. And I hate getting into that topic. I think it's unfair to the rest of Georgia's roster and the equity that they have generated through the last, what would you say, pre-COVID year? So in 2019 was the last time they lost a game.
Well, I guess it was 2020. It was the COVID year.
2020. Okay.
Yeah.
So Brock Bowers was a true freshman 2022 or 21?
2021. So 21,
Okay.
22, this is his third year, yeah.
Okay.
So he's never lost a game.
He hasn't lost a game. And but I also think it's
well, I guess he has lost a game. Let me pull that back. They lost the SEC championship game, that one game to Alabama. Still won the national championship. So yeah, totally wrong on that anyway.
So, but I guess what I'm saying is, as good as he is, and he is elite. I think it's doing a bit of a disservice to all of the equity that they have generated as a overall roster and how dominant they've been, to just all of a sudden assume that because he's not on the field, they can't compete anymore. I think that's foolish. And when you watched the Kentucky game, that was the game that showed me that Carson Beck has grown up and can throw to other people. Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint, Ra Thomas, they went to those guys and those guys delivered, right? So if I'm a Georgia fan, I'm at least saying, all right, Carson Beck is willing and able to find other targets, and now he's going to have to. Does it mean that I'm less convinced that they're going to win a national championship? Well, yeah, a little bit. I think to some degree. But I think they're good enough to win a national championship. And to be honest with you, we came off of College Football Live doing like some midweek reports this week, or mid-season reports. And we did like a top 5 power ranking. And as I started really going through it, I felt like super strong that I could take Penn State, Oklahoma, Florida State, Georgia, and Ohio State. I think Washington's proven that they probably belong in the top 2 or 3, but like it's Ohio State. I think you could take all of those teams, throw them up against a wall, and see where they stick. I know what my eyes tell me when I watch Penn State, but they haven't proven it yet. They're going to have an opportunity this week. I think Ohio State's really good, but also, have we seen the best version of them? No Mayan Williams, no Travion Henderson. Ibuka went out last week. Denzel Burke went out that last week. They haven't had their best players on the field in any one given setting over the last 2 to 3 weeks. Georgia now with this injury, what does that do? Does that kind of just throw them in the mix with everybody else? I'm having a hard time rounding out like a top 5. And Florida State, Florida State's this close to having 2 losses, close, and one to a team that at the time was playing some of the worst football through the first 3 weeks of the season of anybody.
In BC.
At BC, and BC had 18 penalties that day and only lost by 2 points.
Okay, so if I asked you, 2 of the teams you brought up, we're going to see them this weekend in Columbus. Penn State travels to take on Ohio State. It's the marquee game of the weekend. More impressive win, Penn State 31-0 over Iowa, or Ohio State at Notre Dame winning 17-14?
Right now, I would say Penn State, Iowa, because nobody is moving the football in Iowa. Did you know that last week Missouri's punter had more passing yards than Iowa's offense?
I mean, these numbers I hear about Iowa don't surprise me anymore. But I did go back and look at that box score, and for Penn State to put up 400 yards on that defense,
right?
Yeah, I mean that's impressive.
And so, and the thing is, like, the way I look at Iowa, and by the way, look at Iowa's schedule. They might go 11-1.
Oh, I think I'm not going to be surprised at all. I brought this up a couple of days ago.
It's unbelievable. So I guess I look at that defense and I'm like, all right, well, just give Phil Parker the Broyles Award. Give it to him right now.
Right.
Nation's top assistant. Go ahead and give it to him right now. Give him the midseason Broyles Award. I don't care. But that team offensively can't function. And this is just me. Penn State's defense can do that to a lot of people. Penn State's defense, I think they've got 3 NFL guys in their front 4. I think they've got all 3 linebackers, potentially NFL guys. They've got 2 players in the secondary that I think are a first rounder and probably a third or a fourth rounder. They are a problem on defense. And I think offensively, again, we haven't seen them have to, just line up and overwhelm somebody or create a bunch of explosive plays, because they haven't had to, but it doesn't mean they can't do it. That's the thing. It doesn't mean that they can't do it. They just might have to prove it this week.
It is Spittin' Loogs right here on Disrupt the Media. It's brought to you by our friends at Manscaped.
Are you sending me that?
Yeah. So they got your address. Something got screwed up, And there were a couple of guys that didn't get their products, but you're getting more than just this. You're getting a nice little Manscaped kit with a bunch of different products. Go to manscaped.com. You can check out all of their incredible products that they've got for you and put in that promo code Loogs. Promo code Loogs. They're going to hook you up at checkout. Before we get out of here, we always talk a lot of entertainment. And I was trying to find something the other night. Oh, Killing Eve. You put me on this. I finished first season.
You like
Big
it?
fan. Yeah, I can't believe how the first season ended. So I'm ready to jump on to season 2. But when I was pulling that up, it had other titles they recommend. And The Killing was one of those AMC that I watched years ago.
Great show. Great show.
Did you realize, though, they did a spinoff? They did a Swedish version of The Killing.
I heard it was the other way around. I heard the American
so maybe it was
the Swedish. Yeah.
And so what they typically do with these series is they go worldwide with them, same premise. And so I was about to watch it, but I looked at The Killing, the American version on AMC, which you can now get at Amazon Prime. It got like a 97 on Rotten Tomatoes, and the Swedish version was like a 67. So I was like, I've already seen it, so I'm not going to do it. Thinking about going back. I've seen The Killing twice through its entirety, but I've talked to so many people that have never seen The Killing.
It's so good. And that was at the height of when AMC had some really, that was during the Mad Men days.
Breaking Bad.
There was a show too that was about
Walking Dead.
Why is it slipping my mind? It
Hell
was
on Wheels.
No, that was not bad too. That was pretty good. This was the one about the computer geeks.
Oh yeah,
and IBM.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's a weird title.
It is. It was a good
I never
show,
saw it.
Though. Only lasted 2 to 3 years. It was actually a really, really good show. But no, the Killing is fantastic. By the way, so you know the red-haired actress in The Killing?
That's why. Yeah, I was about to bring her up. Yeah.
You know who she's married to?
I've heard this. Give me a hint.
He was an actor that's in one of the most famous movies of all time, but was also in a sitcom series with Michael J. Fox.
Tell me.
He's also in Succession.
Oh, Alan Ruck?
Alan Ruck, Cameron,
wow.
Ferris Bueller. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize. So no, I didn't know that. I knew she was married to somebody famous, an actor. That's crazy. So she's just not in a lot of stuff. She was in World War Z.
Yeah, great movie.
Yeah, and the dude is like a Swedish or Belgian actor because he was in a trilogy of movies that I watched subtitled. But I thought their chemistry, the rapport back and forth between those two was incredible. And that was for the first 3 seasons, and then it kind of took that dive because a lot of people don't realize the premise of the plot for the first season goes into the second season. So you got to grind out 2 years of TV to actually get to that final moment, but it's well worth it. The acting's great. I love the backdrop of Seattle with the rain. I loved it. So I'm thinking about going back and watching it for a third time over the last 12, 13 years.
All right, let me give you a recommendation too.
Yeah, you give me one.
Right. So have you kept up on Netflix? Have you watched these shows like The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor?
So I watched the
Midnight
first
Mass.
Yeah, I watched Midnight Mass like 3 or 4. I watched The Haunting Hill, whatever the first. Okay. I don't like horror though.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Okay. I was going to tell you.
Are you going to tell me about this new docuseries about the devil something?
No. It was so the guy that writes and directs and produces all those. And if you'll notice, a lot of the same actors are in those shows. And one of them is his wife in real life. But so he's come out with a new show on Netflix. It's called The Fall of the House of Usher. And my wife and I just started it, and it's along the same. It's not so much horror; it's got some creepy elements and stuff like that. But it's along the same vein. And if you do like horror, like you'll like all those other shows. This guy's done all of these shows. He creates them and writes them and directs them. But I was going to tell you, I don't know. You don't like horror? See, I figured you for a horror guy.
No.
Do you like ghost type horror? Do you like creepy type horror? Or you just don't like gore?
Psychological thrillers, gore doesn't bother me. Like Seven is one of my favorites. The Shining is one of my favorites.
Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs, incredible.
Right.
I just don't like anything demonic. And I'm one of those that clickbait will bring me in. And so today I saw, don't watch this new Netflix documentary alone. And so I popped on it. And it's based on a 1980 trial. So an 11-year-old becomes possessed. And this is supposed to be a true story. And
it's on Netflix?
It's on Netflix. Just started. Okay. 11-year-old becomes possessed. They do an exorcist. His daughter's boyfriend wishes the possession on him. he kills his landlord like a month later. This is all true story stuff. So they've done this docuseries on it, and they swear do not watch it alone. Like, you will need a therapist if you watch this thing alone.
What's it called?
It's called like The Trial by the Devil. I'll find it because I got it on my
Well, I'll just go look on the Netflix homepage there and see.
Yeah, but it's got the trailer and it looks freaky. And so
that's right up my alley. I love that stuff.
Have fun with that. I'm out. I am out. Hey, enjoy Norman. Do you have like a good spot in Norman that you go to?
Yeah, the Ranch Steakhouse is really good. And then, Dusty Dvorak obviously was an two-time All-American there and lives in Norman. So we always get together, and he has a couple of good spots to hit.
Good, man. Well, look, enjoy it. Manscaped will be there shortly. I know you got a date night coming up tomorrow night or tonight.
No, it's tonight. So my wife's birthday was last Friday, and I'm never home, of course, during the season on her birthday. So we're doing a special birthday version of date night tonight.
Love it. Look, enjoy it, man. You're always great. Tom Luginbill, ESPN, Spittin' Loogs right here on Disrupt the Media. Like and subscribe. It is always brought to you by mybookie.ag. When you sign up there at mybookie.ag, put in that promo code. Next round, they're going to hook you up at checkout right here on Spittin' Loogs.